every morning I wake up and I say thank you to my investors. I say thank you to the physician community for feeling this disempowerment with me and seeing this potential solution with me, because I know that this technology is the future. And we have a real opportunity to be the first movers in the market. We have a real opportunity as practicing physicians to pick up this technology, build it for ourselves, build it for our patients in order to essentially, undo some of the corruption that's been laid upon us with the way that things are currently done.
Welcome to the Licensed to Live show, where professionals, doctors, champions, VIPs, attorneys, and those in public office discover strategies that help you restart and gain what is lost when you find yourself accused. If another has doubted your integrity, questioned your credentials, or caused your actions to come under scrutiny, you are in the right place. On the other hand, if you have never felt the knot in the pit of your stomach when legal papers are served, the heartbreak of disappointing your family when the lock clicks shut on handcuffs, or had to appear before a board of review, then be aware, the longer you serve, the more likely you are to find yourself under the microscope of those who judge. Prepare yourself for this uncomfortable possibility. Now, here's your host, Dr. Jarrett Patton.
Welcome to this episode of License to Live. My name is Dr. Jarrett Patton, and I'm your host for our journey together today and every day you choose to listen to this show. If anyone you know has been dissed in their career, please invite them along this journey. Just go to anywhere you listen to your podcast and subscribe. And you know what I mean by dissed. I mean displaced, disgruntled, disenfranchised, all of these things that we might be experiencing within our own lives and our careers. Today, we will be speaking with Dr. Leah Houston, an emergency medicine physician and founder of Humanitarian Physicians Empowerment Community, or HPEC for short. We'll be talking about privacy, control, blockchain, you name it, and of course, an update on what's been going on with HPEC. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Something smells good. EH3 coffee. EH3 coffee. Premium organic. Nothing better than waking up. EH3 in your cup. Premium organic.
Get your EH3 coffee today at walmart.com. Now, before we get started, let me give you guys another opportunity for something that is coming up. People have been asking me from time to time, how did you get into writing books? How did you write so many books? And what made you take that turn? And what I've done, I've created this free resource available for all of you guys to know a little bit about my story, a little bit about why I started writing books, and how writing books is another way for you to build empowerment in your own life and your own career. To get this resource, all you have to do is go to drjarrettbook.com. That's drjarrettbook.com, and I will send it to you personally. It will change your view on writing books. It will make it something that seems very achievable, even if it's your first time through. So make sure you go to drjarrettbook.com today to get your free video. Welcome to License to Live, Dr. Leah. It is great to have you back.
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Jarrett.
Well, so much has happened. I know we did our first recording sometime back in 2018, and we were talking about HPEC, how you have been building this movement. how you have been talking about for years now, how as doctors, we lose control over everything that we have going on. We're giving away our data. People have their data other places. I even had an episode just a couple episodes ago talking about, intellectual property and how people will even take your intellectual property, even if it's your idea. And you have been on the verge of helping us and getting us to understand so many different things that are essential. And actually, people often take advantage of doctors because, well, we just like to help out. We just like to give things. So Dr. Leah, can you tell us just a little bit of an overview of maybe why you started HPEC and how you're helping us get control back in our own lives?
As physicians, we went into this to learn to help people, the complexities of medicine. And, we used to own our own practices. We used to have a private practice. We used to have privileges in a hospital. We chose where the best place for our patients was. We chose the best consultant. We had, 5 cardiologists. And if a patient had this type of condition, we sent them to this guy. And if they had this type of condition, we sent them to this person. Now we kind of don't have that right. That right has been stripped from us. How has it been stripped from us? We are now part of narrow insurance networks where we're now kind of we're being forced to funnel our patients through whatever doctor is covered by the insurance network. That person might be there tomorrow, but might not be there the next day. If we're working for large vertically integrated health systems, we have to call the person on call, even if we know that person isn't the best person for this particular issue. We have to call them because otherwise, we could be fired or, reprimanded by an administrator because, that person is on call and that's how the schedule is. I've actually had people say, this is not my competency. Yes, I'm a neurosurgeon, but I specialize in this. You should really be talking to this person for this. And I'm disempowered from sending my patient to the right person. There have been the contracts that we sign as physicians, sometimes there's these this fine print that you don't even realize. It basically says you have no right to uphold the Hippocratic oath that you took. It's such a conflict of interest. It drives me nuts.
You're right. And I think oftentimes the kindness, the willingness to help often sets us back as physicians because, well, a lot of times as we're taught, as we're going through medical school, we're going through our residency, we learn to just give and give and give and give. And sometimes people aren't giving in return, whether it's your hospital system you work for, certainly the insurers who are in a game to kind of make profits based on, well, not really having to pay out a lot. Or even if it's something more simple, like our data for our doctors. I mean, our data is everywhere. If we're looking at our NPI numbers, if we're looking at our medical license numbers, there's so many things out there in public that, well, we don't own it. We don't have the control over it. And you're helping us get to that point.
What we don't realize is that during our lifetime as docs, we've kind of been pushed into this digital age. And they've been stacking on these layers of, digital ways of communicating. Whether, now all of a sudden we can go online and we can look up our NPI number. We have places where we can store our credentials online. We're being forced to kind of upload our credentials into our different health systems. And all of this, it's kind of relinquishing 100% of ownership and control over all of these digital assets. When we sign off on a patient chart, we don't really realize what's going on there. But, all of the credentials that we had to give when we entered into the whatever health system that we're working for, they then basically went down to the tech guy in the basement and they said, here's this doctor's credentials. They need to have access to do blah, 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 blah. Order this $17,000 medication, order blood on a patient, book the operating room, discharge a patient. And, they turned essentially those paper credentials, the paper proof that we graduated, that we're licensed, that we have a DEA, into digital credentials that allow us to sign off on these things. they're kind of stored in these hospitals. And when we leave that hospital, we have to do it all over again in another system. And what happens to all that information that we gave them when we do leave those health systems? Do they delete it? Do they properly store it? Do they make sure that it's secure? I mean, there's a tremendous amount of fraud and waste and abuse that occurs because of this, because we don't have any understanding. How many patients did we see? What was the revenue that we generated? How often did we order that medication? That's really information that we should have access to. And that's why I've kind of latched onto this idea of a self-sovereign identity system, a self-sovereign credentialing system where we own and control the data that we generate. And so that's why I'm building HPEC. And it's interesting to hear you say that we spoke back in 2018, because it was just a baby idea in my mind back then. I was just formulating the plan. And now we've raised over $500,000, and we're in the process of choosing a technology partner. And that money was actually raised from practicing doctors, people who want to have the solution built for themselves and for their patients.
And that's amazing. And if nothing else, folks, as you're listening to this, that's the efforts of dedication, persistence, and keep working at your dream. Because we did talk about HPEC. It was pretty much in its infancy stages. And now you're talking about raising $500,000 years later, and you are still achieving this dream. So I think that's fantastic. And just take a moment to congratulate you on that hard work.
Well, thank you. I have to be honest. Every morning I wake up and I say thank you to my investors. I say thank you to the physician community for feeling this disempowerment with me and seeing this potential solution with me, because I know that this technology is the future. And we have a real opportunity to be the first movers in the market. We have a real opportunity as practicing physicians to pick up this technology, build it for ourselves, build it for our patients, in order to essentially, undo some of the corruption that's been laid upon us with the way that things are currently done. And so I want to say thank you to everybody who's paid attention to this, who's listening, and who sees this as a real solution with me.
Is it too late to become an investor in HPEC?
Well, actually, it's not too late. We will be likely doing another fundraising round, but it is too late to become an investor on the crowdfund. Some of you guys might not know what crowdfunding is, but back in 2016, they passed the Jobs Act. And the Jobs Act essentially allows any investor to invest in a startup. Now, before that, you had to be an accredited investor. And you can look this up online. I don't know if the rules have changed, but it's something like you have to own at least $1 million of assets. You have to have at least a $200,000 income, something like that, in order to be an accredited investor. And the KYC and the know your customer and the anti-money laundering rules around that were kind of robust, to the point that, it's not really worth it for people to invest unless they're investing, at least $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 because of the paperwork that was previously involved. Now, with crowdfunding, they've created portals. FINRA is an SEC regulated association that essentially allows for crowdfunding portals so that any investor can invest a small amount of money. Now, our minimum investment was $250. So we were able to raise from over 400 people, a little over 400 people, this $500,000. And some of them invested $200. They just wanted to put their hat in the ring towards this future. And some, invested over $10,000 because they really see the power and the value of this. And so crowdfunding is really exciting. It's really interesting. It gives the American Joe, like the ability to kind of just get in on the ground floor of a company that they believe in. And so I was really grateful for that opportunity because I didn't have to go to venture capital and I didn't have to make, agreements and partnerships with large entities and kind of feel the pressure of them wanting us to do it in their way. Yes. I can listen to the physician community, the ones who actually want this to be built for us.
Staying with your central theme of keeping control, you're keeping control of your own operation that way by not handing it over to a big VC company that may be able to give lots of capital, but they also want some control in the matter too. So hats off to you for doing this, doing it your way, and taking the physician and community along for the ride.
It's so exciting.
Now, one of the things that you're doing with your technology is you're using blockchain as a way to secure our data, to keep some of this information to ourselves so that we control this data. And a lot of people now are kind of understanding a little bit about what blockchain is, especially as far as an investment style, if they're looking at Bitcoin specifically, which is getting a lot of press these days as far as marketing and making a lot of people money on their highs and lows and where it's projected to go in the future. Now, this is all about your technology and what you're doing. I mean, you can tell us a little bit about blockchain, but hey, let's start off first. Hey, are you down with the Bitcoin revolution?
I'm absolutely down with the Bitcoin revolution. And the reason is it's a demonstration of the general consensus of the people that they want to have more control over their ability to transact and their ability to purchase things and store value and not have, essentially the Federal Reserve determining whether or not they can move assets around. If you look at the Reddit GameStop pumping situation that happened also, it's another example of the people deciding to collectively adopt and move in a direction that wasn't necessarily the norm. And it's it's our ability to communicate rapidly, digitally, social media wise. So, Reddit was the example there for us to communicate about these kinds of things that's empowered the people to do that. And so, I am bullish on crypto. I think that it's great that people are paying attention. I think that it's a demonstration that, people really do want an alternative to, the US dollar-backed, currency. And so it's really exciting. I this morning, I actually was like scrolling through Facebook and I saw, did anybody purchase Bitcoin on the $40,000 dip? And I'm like, if I could just kind of screenshot that and like send it to my previous self back in, 2014, just to like let the world know this is something that is gonna, it is gonna pop. And who knows where it's gonna go, but it is a demonstration of our desire to have more ownership and control over our digital assets, whether they be our medical credentials or whether they be our cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd be ready to hop in that DeLorean with you and take that trip back in time and get us back to the future.
Yeah, exactly.
So Dr. Leah, tell us how the blockchain technology is going to help us specifically as physicians.
Okay, so I'll give a quick overview of blockchain in general. So that way we can kind of understand why it's important. The thing that makes blockchain special is the fact that it's duplicative distributed ledger, meaning the instant that you document something, it's copied onto thousands of computers where different entities that are decentralized around the world are watching. Okay, so that copying of that documentation is now being seen by tons of eyes, and all of those eyes are dispersed. And then it's also immutable, meaning you can't erase it. You can't delete it. You can't cook the books. You can't change the numbers. So those two properties are what makes blockchain powerful, because it creates a potential for a trustless system, or I think it's a trusted system personally. So now when you think about a cryptocurrency transaction, you know that they can't cook the books and say that you spent more money than you did, or that you didn't pay them when you did, because it's the inherent in the cryptography is this copy, across the ledger that's being watched. Now, when you think about our medical credentials, I went to medical school once. They issued me a paper copy of my medical degree once. Now, when I want to prove that I went to medical school, right now in this current default world, they need to go back to the medical school. They need to, look through their old record, their one copy of their one ledger, of their one record of their list of doctors that graduated. That one entity has to be in control over that and needs to be the one that's maintaining security and not letting the data be corrupted. Now, what if we were able to hash proof of that credential onto a distributed ledger or a blockchain so that when that credential issuing body issues that credential, it's now a permanent record. So when I show that paper copy or the digital copy in my digital mobile wallet, they can point to where that credential was hashed to on the blockchain and know that it was issued by that issuing body because it's tied there with their public-private key pair. Now, this sounds kind of like, oh, well, who really cares? Like paper copies work well, but it takes us 2 to 6 months to constantly go back to each of these institutions, for the HR person or the GME support staff to respond to our requests. And there's sometimes 50 to 70 steps, to check our vaccination records, our DEA, our medical licenses. They want to check the MBDB database and make sure that we didn't do some nefarious thing in the past. And all those steps take time. So if we can create a distributed ledger that hashes this information for us so that we can check it instantaneously, we can be afforded rapid employment mobility and rapid identity verification. And rather than these centralized entities all having to constantly respond to all of this, which takes a lot of resources and time and energy, the ledger can respond for us. And this is all based on, self-sovereign identity and a decentralized identifier technology and standards that are currently being developed. And that's what we're going to be building this on.
And when you think about how it can be applied and especially all of you locums docs that are out there, some of you guys that have state licenses in 20, 30, 40 different states. And as you think about how you've had to do this in the past, well, if you have that many licensed states, you're going to be spending a lot of time yourself going back and forth with all these individual institutions and places where you got degrees and this, that, and the other. Or you're going to pay someone a lot of money, maybe $3,500, and then an ongoing fee that's going to continue to go on. And it still takes a long time. What you are doing, you are really going to enhance this efficiency so that it becomes almost a one-stop shop. It's going to always be there. It's going to always be accessible. And you're going to cut down that loop of time that it normally takes to be sending letters or emails or requests to different institutions and getting the documentation back. It's just going to make it simple. And again, it gives more power. It gives more control. So if you say, hey, I always wanted to practice in Colorado, and you're like, oh, it's such a headache to get another license and to go through all that process again. Hey, now you can just say, hey, I think I want to go to Colorado, and it'll be a few clicks. They can get all the information they need, and you can probably be credentialed in a matter of a couple of weeks rather than, several months as it takes to go through these processes. So I can see the value and the use for this right away, because if there's one thing I hate to do is going back and figuring out all these credentials, all this paperwork, and the way that goes. And heck, if you can get this for the U.S. Passport Agency as well, so I can quit worrying about where my paper copy of my birth certificate is, that would be something great. Oh, so I'm just throwing that out there for you, Dr. Leah.
Well, I actually want to kind of, talk about that. So who signs the birth certificates? It's the OBGYN.
That's right.
So when you think about this technology, this isn't just for us to own our credentials so that we can move and so that we can communicate and so that we can work. Eventually we as physicians will be issuing credentials for our patients, vaccination records, birth certificates. And so, when we sign off on an EHR chart, that's essentially credential. We're signing off on digital assets that are permanent records for these patients. So when people talk about blockchain health records and patients owning their health records and patients owning their health data, the real vision, the real reason that I'm doing this isn't just so that we can work and we can move and all this stuff. Yeah, that would be great to reduce that credentialing time from 2 to 6 months to 2 to 6 hours. But it's really also about us creating an opportunity for our patients to own their information and for our patients to own their records. When you deliver that baby and you sign that birth certificate, if you could issue a digital credential to that mother's wallet, that when that baby turns 18, all of those digital assets are transferred to that child's wallet, that now adult's wallet. And then that person is now using that credential to get their marriage certificate or get their passport or whatever, along with their vaccination record so that they can get on the airplane or whatever else, what other digital credentials that we're going to be using for these use cases, along with their credential from their bank saying that they have enough money in their account to put a down payment on that house for that mortgage that they're about to get. All of these are use cases around self-sovereign identity and around, credential management. And there's a shift right now in how we are going to be presenting ourselves digitally. And we are at the beginning of that shift.
It's exciting because as this continues to build momentum, as people continue to learn and understand the value of this, it's going to continue to move forward. So tell us what's next with HPEC.
So we are zeroing in on a technical partner. We're having some conversations with a lot of different teams. The thing that's difficult about this, well, there's several things, but number one, it's a very new technology. The standards are still in development. So we're building something that's never been done before with a new technology in a way that's never been used. And we're trying to not only build a credential and identity system for practicing docs, we're trying to build community around that. If we don't know who's a part of the community, if we don't know who's on the system, if we're not able to see each other and find each other and connect with each other, then it's not as valuable, right? So we're trying to kind of do both, and that's what's making it somewhat complex. But, I have a lot of really, really, really highly competent people who want to be a part of this with us and who we're in conversations with. So I feel like we're going to be making those decisions soon.
So listen up, people, and look out and stay tuned, because there are a lot of positive things happening, and this can directly affect the way you practice in the future. So pay attention. Where can people find out more about you, Dr. Leah?
So I'm on social media, Leah Houston MD, at Leah Houston MD. I'm also, my website, hpec.io. You can click the join us button and, put your information in there and become one of the early users of this technology. One of the first adopters. A technology company is built upon the initial users that pick up the system, that want it to be implemented, and that believe in this. So if you want to own your right to work, if you want to own your right to move, if you want to own your right to interact with your patients directly, securely, privately in the future, this is where it's at. Be a part of this, join us. And then, as we move through this process, that's how we'll keep in touch with you regarding potential updates, potential investment opportunities, and things like that. And, this is about us. This is about our practice. This is about our autonomy and our freedom to, empower our patients to also, own and control their data eventually. Without this tool, I don't think that's possible. So I'd love you guys to all join us.
Make sure you get out there. All the links are in the show note to the website where you can join, where you can sign up, where you can learn more about this technology and what HPEC is doing. And most importantly, within those show notes, you'll find links to her social media. You'll find links to HPEC itself, and you can sign up and learn more about HPEC. Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience today?
Thank you for listening. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for, not feeling discouraged. This last year has been rough on the healthcare community, on the medical community. And, there's a horizon, there's a silver lining. I see it. And, I'm really grateful for you taking a listen to this.
Well, thank you very much for being on our show, Dr. Leah. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, to see what you're doing and how you are trying to shape the future course of medicine, the future course for our patients, the future course for us as physicians. So thank you for your efforts in there. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Final judgment. Licensed to live.
Remember, if you or anyone you know has been disengaged, dissatisfied, disgruntled, disempowered, please invite them to go along this journey. Simply go to your favorite podcast player and subscribe to Licensed to Live. Hey, and if you were particularly touched by this episode, make sure you rate it. I know Dr. Leah is a 5-star physician, and she just puts out the content for us so that we can learn maybe about something new. And when you learn about something new, it may even take you to become an early adopter. And then when you start and use the technology first, you can help shape it, you can help direct it, and you can demonstrate its use for others for years to come. So stay tuned to License to Live, where we keep you updated on everything going on out there in life and career. And we'll see you next time.
No matter how disheartening the moment of accusation sounds, how deep the pain of immobilization stabs, or how bleak your future looks, no one can take away your license to live. Keep Dr. Jarrett's expertise handy and unlock your future. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or another podcast player and subscribe right now to Licensed to Live. See you next time.